Every month it's 560 euros per month. It's totally free. I don't need to do anything for that. I'm a free man.
Artificial intelligence and robotics are advancing at a remarkable rate. Now they're matching humans and even outpacing us.
Today, technology and automation are eliminating many jobs.
More than 10 million UK workers are at high risk of being replaced by robots within 15 years. Luckily, Silicon Valley thinks it has a solution for the destruction it's sowing.
What to do about mass unemployment?
We should explore ideas like universal basic income
I think ultimately we will have to have some kind of universal basic income.
to make sure that everyone has a cushion to try new ideas.
Universal basic income is the dramatic and controversial remedy, and Finland is trying it out. Here's the idea. Scrap the welfare state. Instead, every man, woman and child receives the same cash payment from the government every month, whether they have a job or not, whether they're wealthy or not. That might sound wildly utopian, but for 2,000 unemployed people here, it's become a reality. They get 560 euros a month and there are no conditions. Money for nothing. What they're experimenting with here in Finland is something quite radical. In the face of technological mass unemployment, the idea that income, that money, could be a fundamental human right. Those 2,000 people were randomly selected to take part in the trial, and they're scattered all over Finland. Juha Jarvanen is 39 years old and a father of 6. He lives in a small town in the west of Finland, where factory after factory has closed. In January, he received a letter telling him he had been selected to take part in the Universal Basic Income experiment. He had been unemployed for 5 years after going bankrupt.
Actually, there is a couple of years, I think, it's like a black hole in my head. I was just hoping that I would die. But quite quickly after that, like the bankruptcy, I started to decide something on, and again start maybe the old business again.
Juha actually receives less money on the basic income experiment than he did on unemployment benefit. The difference is more than 100 euros a month. He's happy though because of the flexibility it affords. He doesn't have to take menial work or even look for a job. Instead, he carves these traditional wooden drums and sells them on the internet.
For me, a lot of freedom. I feel that I'm out of slavery of the system, and I'm again a free man and a free citizen.
In Helsinki, a technology expo offers a glimpse of the future. One without much room for humans. Nearly half of all jobs in the US could be lost to automation, according to researchers at Oxford University. In the UK, a third of jobs are at risk, according to the Bank of England, a total of 15 million. Fears about that jobless future means universal basic income is popular in Finland, at least conceptually.
And they have a lot of beautiful flowers, they do a lot of work on the garden.
When you get down to the details and some of the people on the scheme, it becomes more controversial. Sini Martinen was another person who received a letter. She was unemployed, but she's well educated and has savings. And since the trial started, she's found a new job, but still gets the income.
Finnish people are the only one who are willing to give a 100 so that your neighbor doesn't get a 50. And that kind of atmosphere here it's always you're taking from somebody else.
But Sini says that basic income gives her the flexibility to look after her father, who has Alzheimer's.
I can plan my work so that, okay, I get the 560, then I work a little bit more, so I get all my expenses covered, maybe can even save a little bit. And then, but with this 560, I can also I took like a week off, not working, so I could do volunteer work.
The trial finishes at the end of 2019. Even when we get the results, though, there's a question over the universal bit of universal basic income. Can an experiment being run in a small Nordic nation really be applied to very different societies and economies around the world?
can do some experiments, we can think about how it might work in practice, what the funding models look like, start to introduce it slowly alongside the current system or even as part of the current system. The political barrier is always significant. When you have a radical change to the tax and benefit system, it takes time and political determination to do it.
It's interesting to some extent that what we're not concentrating more is how to get wages rising, what actually happens to people who are in work, which is the current situation of most people, and almost kind of talking about this slightly futuristic, separate thing of, well, what if all the jobs disappear? What would we do then? The problem at the moment isn't really a lack of jobs. We've got the highest levels of employment we've seen, at least since we started recording it in this way in the 70s, not ever, but we have got pretty high levels of employment. The real problem we're facing is low wages.
This frozen drink company has made a big bet on technology, investing £300,000 on these packing machines.
So these machines have been in the last 8 to 9 months. What we used to be able to produce in a day, we now produce in a couple of hours. And as we commission them further, we'll produce in about an hour.
Does that mean the robots are taking over the humans?
No, the robots, I would say, are complementing the skills we already have, and the humans will upskill into slightly different areas.
The company hired a full-time, highly skilled facilities engineer at their base in Northumberland. They say that employment and technology can be complementary. That also includes coming up with a new way of monitoring and controlling their drink machines in leisure centres and theme parks around the world remotely.
So this is sending the command.
Just refresh that. We're able to operate and keep the machines running without having an engineer pop in and visit all of the time.
So does that mean that if you have there are fewer humans employed, less people have a job as a result if there aren't those 8 engineers going around?
It's helped us expand. It helps us pay better. It helps us look after our customers better and look after our staff better. It does mean that we're able to employ different varieties of staff. So instead of employing 8 engineers, we employ people here to monitor the machines, which means that it's a different level of staff without the guys on the road, without the capital investments involved in that.
Scotland was one of the engine rooms of the first industrial revolution. Now is planning to be the first place in the UK to introduce universal basic income. Friday night in Fife. And one occupation that's unlikely to be replaced by robots. The council here is planning its own basic income trial. It wants to go further than Finland and apply it to an entire town, giving up to £7,000 to everyone in it, no matter their age or employment status. It gets a mixed reaction here.
They're going to give extra money. If they're capable of working, I believe they should be doing community-based tasks for that extra money. I don't believe you should be giving people money for anything, unless they're disabled or too old. Then yeah, okay, fair dues.
I'm an accountant to trade, so I used to work for a company, so I used to look at cost cutting, and sometimes machinery was a better option because it can run 24/7, where staff can't.
Being an employee at a certain fast food restaurant, we recently got in these kiosks where people can place their orders, so it's taken a lot of sort of pressure off us at the tills, but it does take away, a few people have lost their jobs and stuff because of it.
So the money's good because it's mediating that gap between employment and unemployment, but you don't want to make it a permanent thing, do you know what I mean? You want to try and get more jobs going.
Fife Council is still in the design stage. It hopes to have a trial ready for 2019. Applying basic income to a town, called a saturation site, lets you study its effects on an entire population and understand its net impact.
Where would you be looking in Fife?
We would be looking within central Fife here. These are areas where within living memory we've seen the demise of coal industry, demise of some heavy engineering and paper mills and things that were key to employment in these areas. And that's probably where we find the higher incidences of poverty. We want to find out what impact that has on individuals. We want to find out if you have an unconditional payment, what sort of activities, what sort of jobs are you prepared to actually undertake, what sort of further contribution to society would you actually make because you're not having to worry about making ends meet. You've got this basic income to rely on. And therefore, what are some of the behaviour changes that we actually expect to see?
The Scottish Government has pledged funding for Fife's plans, along with Glasgow, Edinburgh and Ayrshire. And there's one of the big questions for UBI. How do we actually pay for it all?
The cost of basic income will be more than the current system. You can fold in a lot of the current elements of the welfare state and a tax system into a basic income. There will still need to be an additional sum on top of that, probably 1 to 2% of GDP, which is significant.
People's lives are quite complicated, and one of the disadvantages of universal basic income is I don't think we've yet thought of how to deal with some of those complexities. So, for example, around housing costs, for example, around extra costs if people find it harder to work, perhaps because of a disability. And so I think, the kind of advantages are often some of the disadvantages as well.
The effects of automation have been so rapid that governments have been left flat-footed. The next industrial revolution is underway. White-collar jobs are just as threatened as blue. UBI has its supporters and detractors on both sides of the left-right political divide. But experiments like those in Scotland and Finland are an attempt to be more proactive, to at least get data on the sort of society we might choose to make.
Everyone should get the basic income, and I believe it after 100 years it will be very normal.
If there's just not enough work for everyone, you just have to try to inspire people somehow to be creative and do other kind of stuff. Otherwise you will have a lot of different kind of social problems that will be very expensive, more expensive than the basic income system.
What's up for grabs here isn't just the sort of jobs we do, but the sort of lives we live.